Hey guys, this is Gene Jensen.
And I'm Ryan Lamb.
Hey guys, this is Gene Jensen.
And I'm Ryan Lamb.
And today we're going to show you how to rig and the many different ways to rig a Senko. Alright, so first of all, what is a Senko? A lot of people call them a stick bait. Here's the original, the Gary Yamamoto Senko. There's been a lot more come along over the years. This is Biospawn Exo Sticks. The Ocho by Strike King. Those are the ones we have here. There are plenty more. Yum makes some. They all make them. But basically, it's a stick bait. I call it a turd, because that's pretty much what it looks like. And today we're going to show you the different ways that we rig a Senko. There are, what, 10 I think total. So we're going to break it up into two videos. It's going to be this 5 and the next 5. And so we'll leave a link to the next one at the end of this video.
Why haven't you subscribed yet? Hit that button down there and subscribe to the channel.
Alright, so the very first way we're going to talk about fishing a Senko is weightless Texas rigged. Basically, you take your Senko. I like to use 2 different hooks. Both of them are going to be grip pin hooks from Mustad. One is an offset round bend hook, and the other one is an EWG grip pin. So, and the reason I like the grip pin is it holds the bait up on the hook, and it keeps it from sliding down during the hook set, and it also makes your bait last longer. So, with the offset round bend hook, first thing you do is I like to lay it along the side and see where it's going to go in. Let me flip it around. See where it's going to go in and all the little places, and so I know it's going to go right down through the center and it's going to come out the side, but I just wanted to know where it's going to come out on the side. The most important thing is to make sure that you put the tip directly down the center of the bait. Down the center, you're going to come out right there where you visually marked where it's supposed to come out at. And then as you slide it through, you rotate it. That hook eye slides through and disappears, and then you lay the hook alongside the bait, see where it's going to go in at, bring the tip down to that, and then just kind of turn and slide it up. And you want that tip of that hook to be just barely sticking inside that bait, just like that. Alright, so there it is. What you do is you tie this on to a medium or medium moderate action rod, flip it around cover, flip it around brush, have 15-pound fluorocarbon on it, and just wait for the bite. It's a line watching technique. You watch the line. Anytime during this video, as we're going through these techniques, if I've done a video on how to fish it and how to fish this specific technique, I will put a link up here in the video. You look up here in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that little eye that's up there. Click on that eye, and you'll see the cards that drop down that link you to those different videos. But anyway, it's a weightless Senko.
Okay, so Gene just told you about rigging a Texas-styled weightless Senko. One of my favorite things to do is add some weight to it, and there's a couple different ways you do it, but just like Gene had just showed you, you just want to rig it up, make sure it's center. And here I'm using an extra wide gap hook. The offset works just fine, but the EWG is my preference. So you just rig it on there.
Let me show you real quick the difference between the two. Okay. All right. So the difference between the two, when you're putting the hook into the worm the last time, with an offset worm hook like this, you actually go in and up into the worm just like this to keep that hook from going through the other side. With an EWG, notice what he did. You take and you push it straight all the way across out the other side of the worm, and then you do what's called text posed. You scrunch your worm, you pull your worm away from the tip of the hook, and then let it fall back down into it just like that, and that makes it weedless.
That's going to make it weedless, but also it's going to make it so it's very easy to hook fish, because the only plastic that it has to come out of is just popping through right there. Okay, so my favorite way to have a pegged or like a locked in weight on the Senko or on the stick bait is to use one of these screw-in style sinkers. And so what you want to do is, usually what you're going to do is you're going to actually slide the sinker on first. It has a little insert there that you slide the line through. Then you're going to tie your hook on, rig the bait up, but you know, we're just going to slide it in this way. So I'm going to put that through there. And when you're using these screw lock bullet sinkers, you want to actually have a little bit more plastic on the end there so that there's some plastic for the wire screw to actually grab onto. So I have this rigged a little. When I was threading the bait on the hook, I gave it a little more room than I usually do. And then all you're going to do is just screw that bullet weight in. Try and get it as straight as possible. And that's locked in. So what you have there is you have a stick bait that's going to really come through real thick cover real well if you're fishing matted grass, if you're fishing brush. This bait is really good at getting through those little gaps in the cover. You know, a lot of times bait with appendages, a ribbon tail worm, those kind of things will get hung up sometimes. It's amazing how just a little bit of plastic can grab onto something and it won't let go. So the stick bait is excellent for flipping and pitching around heavy cover, and also you know, just has it's really subtle, and the fish, you know, there's times when they want those baits with the appendages, and they want, you know, any sort of ribbon tail, some action to the bait. And then there's times when this bait just falls down and it literally just falls right to the bottom and it doesn't move. And there's been times, you know, pitching to stumps and docks and that shallow cover where the weighted Texas rig is with a stick bait on it is way more effective than using a bait that has a lot more action. So this is definitely my favorite way to fish it. Okay, so I just showed you the screw lock sinker. Now the other way I like to take the bullet weight and make it pegged is by using bobber stops. These are fantastic for keeping the weight snug to the worm, and you know, the screw lock's just my preference, but this is a great alternative. So what you want to do when you're rigging your bobber stops on is you want to put the bobber stop on first, then you want to thread on your bullet weight, then you're going to tie on your hook, and then you're going to rig your Senko. So just for this, you know, shooting this video, we already have this rigged up here, so I'm actually going to do it opposite. But you have your weight coming on here, and then you are going to thread that bobber stop on, and these are super cheap. They're an awesome little deal here. And then all you're going to do is you're going to push that bobber stop down, and what that does is that makes it so that weight is snug to that worm. You know, it has a little bit of play, but it's going to stay on there pretty snug. Some people like to use 2 bobber stops, but that's, you know, that is really your choice. And you know, a lot of times they'll use 2 bobber stops if the line is a lot thinner. So that is the other way that I peg the weight on the worm.
All right, so the next way to rig a Senko is probably the most popular way, and actually it's probably my least favorite way to do it. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, it's called wacky style, or wacky rigging. Is you just take the hook and you put it halfway through or put it halfway down the worm, about where the egg sac is, and hook it in there, and it makes it flop around. Well, the reason I've hated it for so many years is because of the hook set ratio. I never could get decent hook sets on the fish. I just always pull the bait out of their mouth, and I never could figure out why. Well, a few years ago I was fishing with some really old guys, and they had actually made themselves a Wacky Rig hook out of an old Cahill hook, and they still make them. Mustad has them. I'm sure the other companies have them. This is one of my favorite Wacky Rig hooks. It is by Hayabusa. I can't remember the whole name of it. I'll put the link down in the description. But I found it on Tackle Warehouse, and this hook has just become one of my favorites. And but you can go and you can get one of the regular larger Cahill hooks. Nobody makes one that's really small, but get a larger Cahill hook, and it will work just as good, if not better. I just like smaller hooks. All right, so let's go over how to rig it. The things you're going to need is you're going to need a Wacky Rig tool. You can find these at Bass Pro Shops. As a matter of fact, I think this is a Bass Pro Shop brand. I used to have one of the original brass ones. You're going to need a Wacky Rig hook, fluorocarbon line, and these little bitty O-rings that are right here, and they come with the Wacky Rig tool, and then you can buy extras at the hardware store. Alright, so the first thing you do is you take your little O-ring on your Wacky Rig tool, and then you take and you slide that O-ring along the tool just like that, so it's come from where it's stored, it stores on the back end, all the way to right here. Okay, and then you take your stick worm, this is an exo stick, slide it in to where the egg sac is right on the edge, or the fattest part of the bait, and then you just with your thumb you slide that O-ring onto the tool, or onto the worm. And the reason you use this O-ring is to make these baits last longer. The Gary Yamamoto Senkos are famous for only lasting 1 or 2 fish just because of the materials they're made out of, but they catch a ton of fish. I mean, it wouldn't become one of the most popular baits if it wasn't for that. But then you take your hook and you basically just hook the O-ring just like that. And you fish it just like you do a weightless Texas rig Senko. You throw it in, let it sink around, and when I get a video done of this, I'll go ahead and link it in here, but I don't have one right now. Now, another way of wacky rigging a Senko is one that actually Ryan taught me. It is, we call it the poor man's way. We take a piece of tape, electrical tape. This is just some black tape we found here in the barn. Cut a little strip out of it, not very long, about 1.5 inches, and you're going to wrap it around the egg sac of the stick bait. Just wrap it around just like this. Maybe a wrap and a half, maybe 2, just to help it hold, because it's not going to stick to the worm. It's actually going to stick to itself. So make sure that it covers itself up pretty good. Then you take your Wacky Rig hook and you just barely skin the outside of that piece of tape and a little bit of that worm without sticking your finger, just like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to make that worm last through a dozen fish or more. It's just an absolute phenomenal way of making that worm last. And that is how you rig a Wacky Rig Senko.
Another way I really like to fish the stick baits is threaded onto a shaky head, and we all know how effective shaky heads can be. It's a little bit different than, it's actually a lot different than fishing the stick bait pegged with a bullet weight. When you peg a bullet weight on there, or you have a weighted Texas rig where the bullet weight is sliding, a lot of times that stick bait falls to the bottom. It's just going to lay over, and it has almost no action at all. You know, it's dead sticking. So when you're using a shaky head, a lot of times what it'll do is it doesn't have that much more action, but it just kind of pops the tail up a little bit more. And if the fish are in a little bit more aggressive mood, that can really be a difference maker. And the other thing too is that there are certain times that the bottom content, whether it be rock or light grasses, sometimes where a shaky head just comes through certain things better. So what I like to do is use the Picasso shakedown jig head. The reason that I like these so much is that they have a great hook on them. It's a pretty decent sized hook. A lot of these shaky heads have a small hook and a really tiny gap between the screw lock keeper and the hook point itself, which means you're going to miss more fish. And so this is also, the screw lock keeper is made out of titanium, and that's what sold me on it completely, was the titanium screw lock. I mean, I've had so many jig heads where the hook is still perfect and I break the keeper and the jig head's useless. So this guy moves all around, and you don't have to worry about it breaking when you set the hook on a fish. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your stick bait and you're just going to thread it on there. Kind of dig it in a little bit to get it started, and then just twist, and it'll move right up that spring. And then there's 2 different ways to hook this. You can do the Tex pose, which we had just talked about a little while ago, where you can actually push the hook through. And this will kind of take a little bit of trial and error, because it can kind of make the stick bait not very straight, but the fish don't really seem to care. So that's a Tex pose. And you can see that the bait, has some bend to it. So when it's sitting underwater, it's that tail is going to be a little heavier. But the other way to do it, and this is a pretty popular way, is to hook it like Gene had showed you on the just the offset round bend hook. And what I do there is you just measure it up like Gene was saying, pop it in there, and that gives you that perfectly straight presentation. So like I said, the fish really don't seem to mind. It's really more about what you like to do. I'll tell you what, one of the things that I've noticed is when you're throwing this on lighter line, it does take more hook set, more power to get through this plastic when you're rigging it this way, not Tex pose, but just your standard Texas rig. It takes a little bit more power to be able to push down and make that hook pop through the plastic. So if you're using heavier line like 15-pound Seagar and VizX, or 20-pound, that's when you're going to want to rig it like this, so you can get that power on that hook set and pop it through there. When you're using lighter line, that's when you want to actually switch to the Tex pose, skin hook it, and that way just a little bit of pressure, and then your hook's going to pop right out. And that is how you fish a stick bait on a shaky head.
All right, well, hopefully you guys can ignore the background noise. It just started raining, and I got a tin roof on my barn. So suck it up, Buttercup. It's just going to be a whole lot of fun. This is probably the most underrated way to fish a Senko, and that is a drop shot. You're talking about a way to slay the fish when they're really, really finicky. Go to a 3-inch bait, 3-inch Senko, 3-inch, well, whoever makes a 3-inch bait, or cut your exo stick off. But it is a phenomenal way to fish it. Make sure that you rig it on a long leader. This is kind of short. I already had it rigged up and I wasn't going to tie another one, but 24, even 36 inches long. Long leader between your hook and your sinker. Mainly so you can get the maximum amount of fall out of that bait. And the way I rig it and the way I fish is I always fish it on fluorocarbon line. I got a medium light action rod. I probably will not have braid on this rod if I can afford not to. If I have braid on it and I don't want to put a new spool on it, I just fish it the way it is and it'll just fall a little bit slower. But drop it down there, let it go to the bottom, and then bring it up to a tight line and then drop it to a slack line, and that worm will just, will just shimmy on down and bring it back up to a tight line and let it fall back down, and you get the maximum amount of fall in the strike zone that you can get. Now, the way I rig it on there is quite simple. Just like any other drop shot, you take it, let me get that line out of the way so you guys can see this, and you just nose hook it just like this. I use a slightly larger drop shot hook, and like I said, it's going to be about a 3-inch bait. This is a little long. I don't have any 3-inch Senkos with me, but just nose hook it just like that. Then the alternative way, which is actually the way I would prefer to do it, is wacky rig it. Take that 3-inch Senko or cut your exo stick down and just hook it in the middle and do the same thing. Lift it up onto that tight line, drop it to a slack line, let it fall freely. Watch your line as it's falling and watch for that line to jump. And as soon as that line jumps, you just pull your rod tight, don't set the hook hard, and start reeling, and you'll catch a lot of fish. So the drop shot rig, totally underrated, will catch the crap out of bass. All right, so don't go anywhere. We are about to shoot another video with 5 more ways to fish a Senko. So I'm gonna leave the link right up here, but that's the first 5. That's the ones that we use the most, the ones that he uses the most, and the ones that I've got to start fishing Senko because I hate it. I've hated it for years, and there's so many different ways you can catch a fish on it. But be sure to check out the description down below. We're going to have a list of all the baits and everything that we use, everything that you can link to, and to go buy them if you want to buy them or whatever. I don't really care. But we're going to have them down there for your information. And check out the other video. Well, like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water. Go out and catch some fish. And have a great day.
Have a good one, guys.